An empty blind date turned incredible when a mistakenly seated girl exposed a hidden connection. Matthew's fingers danced nervously over the polished surface of his table as he waited, glancing around the restaurant like a stranded fish in an ocean of elegant sea creatures. He had never intended to be here, thrust into the world of upscale dining, surrounded by upscale people who seemed worlds apart from his roots. The sharp scents and hushed whispers felt alien, reverberating in his mind like the ticking of an unseen clock. He remembered vividly the hardness of his upbringing, the struggles after his mother passed, and how each moment without her felt heavier than the last. A blind date set up by his sister was supposed to ease his loneliness, but instead it felt like an inquisition. He hesitated over the menu, each item a reminder of a life he couldn't afford but was now forced to impersonate. What would his date think of him? Would she see right through his facade? His hands fidgeted, his breath shallow as self-doubt gnawed at him. The chair opposite was empty, and with each passing moment, the dinner crowd surged with laughter, further drowning him in a tide of inadequacy. Just as he felt ready to bolt, she arrived. Or rather, someone arrived. A mix-up, apparently. The waitress, oblivious to his turmoil, ushered a quick-talking woman to the seat his date was supposed to claim. Matthew's irritation simmered. He had prepared to be polite to a stranger, yet here was an uninvited whirlwind taking up space in his carefully crafted night of isolation. The woman, with her vibrant energy and passion glimmering in her eyes, didn't seem to notice his discomfort. They exchanged initial pleasantries, the air thick with awkwardness, but as the conversation flowed, the walls he had built around his heart began to crack. "Sarah," she introduced herself, a bright smile spreading across her face. Laugh lines hinted at a depth he hadn't expected. But then she asked him about his work, and his lips tightened instinctively as he floundered about how best to explain the architectural project brewing in his mind. A local community center? Sure, but with his mother's dream in mind, something more profound than mere concrete and steel. Before they could delve further, vibrations of distraction swept through his thoughts. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Matthew blinked, trying to reel himself back to the conversation, and felt an unexpected spark ignite. As he spoke of his designs, illuminated by memories of his mother's artistic spirit, Matthew realized Sarah was listening, truly listening. They shared stories of their families, and that was where it began to shift. He swelled with pride as he articulated his vision for the project, infusing it with underrepresented voices. But the moment sparked unease when Sarah mentioned her struggles against societal elitism, her own family's reservations about her pursuits fueled by judgment. They were both on the precipice of something profound, yet buried deep was the shadow of their divided pasts, a rivalry veiled in unspoken histories. The flickering candle between them bore witness to the racing storm of thoughts. How could he mend the rift his family perpetuated while cherishing the connection forming with Sarah? Each second in that room became a hostage to his growing anguish, a tangle of loyalty and burgeoning affection that demanded recognition. The environment hummed with tension, and suddenly Matthew felt exposed. Could he risk following the path Sarah's spirit lit for him? The clock in the corner ticked on, and with every passing second, the stakes grew higher. Would he confront his past and step into an uncertain future? The weight of choice pressed down, suffocating, leaving him aching for liberation. Matthew caught Sarah's eye across the flickering candlelight, the warmth of her smile momentarily disarming the fortress of self-doubt he had immersed himself within. Yet the internal battle raged on. While her presence ignited something within him, he couldn't shake the gnawing fear of rejection that seemed to mar every new connection. How long could he keep up this facade of confidence, revealing just enough to intrigue her, without unveiling the doubts that strung together the very fabric of his identity? Tell me more about your project. It sounds incredible, Sarah pressed, her gaze intent and encouraging. A simple query, yet the weight of her expectation felt monumental. He hesitated, teetering on the edge of disclosing his aspirations, afraid that any moment of vulnerability might shatter his carefully constructed image. Taking a deep breath, Matthew decided to draw from the inspiration behind his vision. It's about creating spaces that allow voices to be heard, especially those from communities often overlooked. It's not just architecture, it's about celebrating culture and resilience, he said, pride rippling through his words. The passion behind his project was undeniably genuine, yet he couldn't shake the shadow of doubt that crept into his mind, whispering that his dreams were naive, that his background did not qualify him for such ambition. "Wow," Sarah said, leaning in as if to absorb every syllable. "You're doing what so many people often talk about but never follow through with. That takes courage." There it was, the spark of validation that made his heart race. "Well, it's easier said than done. I grew up in a family that didn't exactly encourage dreaming big," he admitted, his voice wavering slightly. The moment he let those words slip, something unlatched inside him. Here was this woman, openly engaging with his thoughts and ambitions, yet he felt a reverberation of insecurity each time he thought of his past. "I get that. I faced similar challenges," she responded, a shadow passing over her bright expression. "People think they know what you can achieve based on where you come from, but they don't see you, not really." Matthew nodded, instinctively sensing the bond tightening between them. They were both navigating a territory where vulnerability was both a risk and an opportunity, a chance to redefine who they were outside the expectations of their families. As Sarah spoke about her struggles in breaking free from elitist labels, Matthew felt a growing determination swell within him. If she could confront her ancestral judgments, perhaps he could too. "What if we helped each other?" he proposed suddenly, emboldened by the energy in the air. "I mean, maybe we could collaborate on something that showcases both of our experiences. It could be a project that's a reflection of our journeys." His breath caught in his throat. It was a reckless idea, and yet it felt like a breakthrough came crashing through his otherwise tame ambitions, a chance to step outside his comfort zone and merge their talents. Sarah's eyes lit up with the suggestion, the flicker of excitement palpable. "Matthew, that's brilliant. I'd love to brainstorm ideas." But suddenly, the thrill of that moment became entangled with doubt. The intensity of Sarah's enthusiasm mirrored the urgency for him to confront the doubts that had held him back for far too long, to dare to believe he could emerge from the perceptions of who he had thought he was. Could he really share this path with someone who seemed to shine with endless potential? The candle flickered again, the flame exacerbating the shadows around them. The confrontation with himself loomed heavy. Would he dare take that leap with her? Or would he retreat into the safety of anonymity one more time, denying both the potential of collaboration and the connection they had begun to forge? As silence fell between them, punctuated only by the distant clinking of cutlery, Matthew felt the specter of choice hovering over him. With each second ticking by, the moment of decision approached, a crossroads both exhilarating and terrifying. So, with determination he hadn't known he possessed, he took a breath, ready to unveil a part of himself he had kept hidden for far too long. The question loomed large. Would he take the first step, or would he falter at the edge of possibility? Matthew's next words could shift everything, and he felt the weight of the moment press down as he prepared to leap. Matthew focused on Sarah's expectant gaze, feeling an urgency that bubbled up from deep within him. This was not just about architecture or collaboration. It was an opportunity to reshape his narrative. He could either let the fear whisk him away into obscurity, or ignite a spark of courage that might actually define him. He swallowed hard, breaking through the walls of apprehension. "I want to build something that speaks to the heart. Spaces that embody stories," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. "Not just for the sake of aesthetics, but to challenge perceptions. Like the very idea of what good design is, who it serves, And the stories it can tell. As the words flowed, Matthew felt a sudden weightlessness. He was no longer merely a student of architecture. He was a participant in an evolution, his own. The boundaries that had colored his upbringing now began to dissolve. Sarah's interest appeared genuine. She leaned further in, as if each word mattered profoundly. "We all have stories," Sarah said, her tone reflective but vibrant. "But it takes a leap to let others in." Exactly. The affirmation charged the air between them. "It's scary to let go of the masks we wear. I mean, I'm not sure I'm ready to challenge those narratives." Her gaze softened, and he could sense her empathy. "Vulnerability is strength," she responded. Her eyes held his with an intensity that made time feel suspended, raising the stakes of his next words. Matthew saw reflection in her words. She had dismantled the walls he had built around himself with calculated precision. It became evident that their conversations weren't merely surface discussions, they were portals. Each dialogue like a door ajar, inviting him to brave the unknown. "Maybe we should forge a connection beyond this room," he proposed suddenly. There was no hiding behind self-deprecation. He was calling forth something tangible. "Let's sketch our ideas together, really collaborate on something impactful." It was bold, a venture into a territory he hadn't previously dared enter. Sarah's face brightened, but as she opened her mouth to respond, a shadow flickered across her features, something darkly rooted that suggested unease mingled with shared exhilaration. "I want to, Matthew. But what if? What if it doesn't work out? What if we expose ourselves too much?" A clarion call resonated in that moment. It wasn't just about their collaborative aspiration, but about confronting fears in tandem. "What if we celebrate the fragility in our paths instead?" he countered, feeling his own anxiety tug at him. "What we create might not be perfect, but it will be real, and maybe that's where the magic lies." As they navigated the nuances of vulnerability, Matthew could feel the darkness of hesitation begin to dissipate. The mutual acknowledgement of fear carved a pathway for sincerity. This initiative wasn't merely a project. It was an act of self-definition, a reclamation of their voices. The candle dimmed, and the soft hum of the restaurant morphed into the backdrop of their unfolding narrative. He sensed a reckoning ahead, the anticipation coiling tighter with every moment. Soon enough, they would either solidify this fragile connection or allow the uncertainties of their past to constrict their ambitions anew. What would it mean to openly create together? And could they unearth the courage to share their defined visions with the world beyond this intimate setting? As these questions loomed large, Matthew felt the promise of transformation flickering just before him, urging him to take that next step into the unknown. The next chapter awaited, tinged with both dread and excitement, as the door to their collaboration loomed. Would they walk through together or remain paralyzed at the threshold? The next morning, Matthew awoke with a rush of adrenaline, the gravity of the previous night's conversation surrounding him like the crisp early light filtering into his apartment. The reality of his proposition loomed large in his mind, twining anticipation with palpable anxiety. He had made a bold move, something he rarely allowed himself to do. The mere thought of what lay ahead ignited a mixture of fear and excitement that set his heart racing. As he sipped his coffee, Matthew reviewed sketches from his previous projects, his notes filled with concepts that had never been fully realized. They felt stale now, remnants of a past self who rarely dared to push boundaries. But the notion of working with Sarah, a true collaboration, unfurled vibrant new images in his imagination. He envisioned spaces that evoked emotions, that told stories beyond their brick and mortar. "No more limitations," he muttered under his breath, the words a subtle promise to himself. He grabbed a clean sheet of paper, the blank canvas fueling his creativity. But when he began to draw, the lines felt hesitant, unsure. His hand trembled as he restrained the instinct to conform to traditional forms. Each stroke seemed to echo the weight of expectation, both self-imposed and external. Frustrated, he slammed the pencil down, the sharp sound breaking the calm of his solitude. "What's holding you back?" he asked himself, breaking the quietness that had momentarily filled his space. Was it fear of failure, the lurking dread that no one would see value in his designs? Or could it be his precision-driven mindset, honed to produce perfection but resistant to the chaos of raw creativity? After a deep breath, Matthew resolved to shake those thoughts. He decided to meet Sarah before class. Perhaps their discussion might lift the creative fog swarming his mind. It wasn't just about the designs anymore. This was about the beginning of a new phase in his life. At the cafe, Matthew arrived early, his fingers tapping anxiously on the table. The aroma of fresh pastries intermingled with the burgeoning hum of morning chatter. When Sarah entered, her presence brightened the space, instantly intoxicating him with inspiration. "Hey," she greeted, her voice laced with an easy warmth that wrapped around him. "I've been thinking about what we discussed. It's invigorating, but overwhelming, too." He felt a thrill at her honesty, a shared vulnerability igniting the moment between them. "It is, but maybe that's a good thing. We can use that energy. Let's create something real, even if it's a little chaotic." They dove into conversation, exchanging ideas and thoughts that bounced off each other like the sunlight glinting through the cafe's windows. Drawing without constraints and celebrating imperfections became their mutual mantra. It felt electric as they sketched and shared personal inspirations, discovering new layers to both their artistry and themselves. As they wrapped up, Matthew felt lighter. This wasn't just about design, it was about companionship, creating something intimately linked to their shared fears and dreams. But a nagging doubt lingered at the edges of his enthusiasm. Would this connection withstand the scrutiny of others, the expectations of their professors and peers? "Think we can make this work?" he asked, testing the waters of their budding partnership. She paused, brows furrowed. "What if we encounter criticism? What if the world doesn't understand our vision?" A flicker of trepidation shadowed her features. Matthew hesitated, feeling that familiar uncertainty creep back in. But what if we redefine what they consider valuable? What if our risk becomes our strength? In that moment, they stood at a precipice. Their potential creations reflected the very doubts that plagued their discussions. As they left the cafe, an unspoken pact formed between them. Each step accompanied whispers of doubt, yet the pull of painting a narrative through design was heavier. Could they redefine not just their artistic identities, but perhaps their lives as well? Their first real challenge awaited, but Matthew sensed the dawn of a thrilling adventure ahead. The relevance of their work was about to be tested, and the stakes felt insurmountable. Would they be able to confront the critics and emerge stronger, or would fear shackle their ambitions once more? Each passing day intensified Matthew's commitment to the collaboration with Sarah, and yet a quiet storm brewed within him. The tension between ambition and apprehension swirled like summer clouds ready to burst. As he walked into their first class together, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. The gallery wall showcased the students' work, and the air pulsed with a blend of excitement and critique. Matthew's heart raced. He felt both exhilarated and vulnerable. Today was not just about their concepts, it was about putting their shared vision under the academic microscope. He recognized that this moment would serve as a barometer for his insecurities and his desire for validation from others. Would the peers he admired understand his ambitions? Would Sarah's enthusiasm remain unwavering when faced with external judgment? The professor's voice pierced through the chatter, commanding attention. "Today, we'll critique each other's projects." A collective murmur fanned through the room, a blend of intrigue and anxiety palpable in the eyes around him. Matthew exchanged a glance with Sarah, her face a study in determination. He felt the warmth of her support,
its glow acting as a temporary salve against his fears. "Let's go first," he suggested, trying to mask his tremor with confidence. But as they set up their designs in front of the class, doubt slithered through his mind. What if their collective vision collapsed under scrutiny? As he projected the images on the screen, his voice wavered, yet he resolved to push through.
This is more than just design. It's a reflection of our experiences and aspirations. Each slide revealed their purposeful chaos. Vibrant colors, unorthodox shapes, concepts that dared to intertwine personal narratives with form. They showcased the journey from doubt to discovery. And as they explained their choices, Matthew noticed Sarah's passion igniting a spark in the audience. He felt a surge of pride. Maybe this would work. That pride flickered, however, when a critic emerged from the back. But how do you know this will resonate with anyone? Are you just creating for yourselves, or is there substance to your work that speaks externally? The words struck like a bell tolling doom, sending heartbeats racing. Matthew's chest tightened. Was he merely indulging in self-exploration? He exchanged a glance with Sarah, whose expression was resolute, eyes blazing with something fierce. He swallowed hard, absorbing the weight of her silent encouragement. "We're evolving through our creations," Sarah responded, her voice unwavering. "It's a journey towards deeper connections, both personal and communal. We're not afraid to blur lines, to explore what others might consider not marketable or too abstract. Redefining value is the essence of our work." As the class absorbed her words, Matthew felt a flicker of courage bubbling to the surface. He stepped forward. This isn't just artistic expression. It's about questioning norms and encouraging dialogue. We challenge the assumption that only the conventional is accepted. A moment hung in the air. Silence enveloped the room, reflecting the internal struggle of each student. Matthew realized they had ignited something deeper, confronting not just their critics, but also their own fears. He understood he was no longer just presenting an idea. He was stepping into a new version of himself, one that embraced vulnerability as a source of strength. As the critiques spiraled into discussion, Matthew repeatedly surprised himself with newfound confidence. Each conversation with his classmates chipped away at apprehension. The uneasy whispers in his mind grew softer, replaced by the empowering resonance of shared exploration. In the commotion of voices, Matthew caught Sarah's eye. Their shared energy was infectious, solidifying the bond they had forged outside the classroom into something even more profound. What had begun as a nervous collaboration transformed into a powerful shared mission. Yet, as they wrapped up the session, the festering doubts returned, lingering just beyond the excitement. Despite the enthusiasm from peers and that initial rush of validation, he couldn't shake the feeling that critics lurked, silently judging the authenticity of their risk. "Do you think we can handle the feedback we'll get outside this environment?" he asked as they left the room, adrenaline pouring from every pore. The uncertainty loomed large, but Sarah smiled. Determination etched across her features. "We will. We're ready to redefine this together." Just as Matthew began to feel hopeful, Sarah continued, "But what if it's not just about confronting the critics? What if it's about recognizing who we are in this process?" That question lingered in the air like a tether, beckoning Matthew to push further into the uncharted territories of his own identity. The adventure had just begun, and he felt both terrified and alive. And as they stepped into the corridor, a sudden weight hung heavy above them. The certainty of their next challenge lay on the very horizon, waiting to break. What awaited in the external world, where their art would be dissected and commodified, continued to pulse at the back of Matthew's mind, a question poised to reveal a truth he had yet to confront. The following weeks unfolded like a tightly wound clock, each tick amplifying Matthew's anticipation and dread. He and Sarah committed to refining their project, yet the real challenge loomed just beyond the classroom, an impending exhibition where their work would face a far broader audience. In the flow of creative energy, a vein of worry churned underneath. Matthew pondered what success actually meant. Would charm and technique suffice in the eyes of seasoned critics? The atmosphere in the studio became charged with both urgency and enthusiasm. As they sketched and experimented together, every moment sparked revelations. But each brushstroke and digital rendering prompted Matthew to confront uncomfortable truths. While Sarah thrived under scrutiny, he backpedaled. "What if our concept isn't enough? What if they see right through us?" he asked one afternoon, breaking the calm. "You overthink everything. This is a reflection of us," Sarah said, her voice steady but playful. "If we're authentic, that's all that matters." Her words carried a weight that Matthew found grounding, yet he wished he could internalize her conviction. Despite their collaborative achievements, he felt his insecurities shifting like shadows around them. As the exhibition date crept closer, their conversations took on a frantic energy. They dissected every element of their work, from color choices to symbolic motifs, debating their intentions as if their lives depended on it. Sarah's relentless spirit inspired Matthew, yet he grappled with the nagging itch of self-doubt. Was he simply a passenger on her journey? In a quiet moment, he slumped over a desk strewn with half-finished designs. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just echoing your ideas. I'm afraid I'm not contributing enough." He dropped his head, hands running through his hair, silently questioning if he could step out of her shadow. "Matthew, listen to me," Sarah said firmly. "Your voice is essential to this process. You're not in my shadow, you're shining next to me. The magic happens because of what you bring to the table. Don't minimize your impact." Her gaze locked onto his, a catalyst for change within him. The next critique was looming, and Matthew started taking steps outside his comfort zone. Acknowledging his reliance on Sarah, he began to actively contribute more ideas, overcoming the urge to defer to her insights. The weekend before the exhibit, he presented a new element, a thematic layer exploring not just aesthetics, but also emotional resonance in their designs, integrating personal narratives directly into their pieces. The excitement in Sarah's eyes, as he spoke, ignited a flame in Matthew's chest. As he articulated his vision, each syllable steeped in a newfound assurance, the feeling that he was part of a greater enterprise solidified. He realized that his voice mattered, and so did his thoughts. They breathed life into their collaboration. With each session, he could see the artistic possibilities expanding. Still, the anxiety clung like a persistent shadow. As they mounted the final preparations for the exhibition, Matthew stood before their work, heart racing. He felt the blood rush to his face as they rehearsed their talking points together, a wave of anticipation mingling with dread. When the lights dimmed, he'd have to confront not just the critics, but also the petrifying messages swirling in his mind. "Ready or not?" Sarah nudged him with a playful grin. Yet Matthew could see the same mix of nerves reflected in her eyes. He nodded, though it felt like committing to a plunge into unknown depths. "We need to step into this together. Do you think we're prepared for what's coming?" "More than prepared," she said, a fire igniting in her demeanor. "This is our moment, Matthew." As they walked toward the gathering crowd, adrenaline pulsing through their veins, each heartbeat echoed a question. Would their shared vision resonate deeply enough to withstand critique? Standing shoulder to shoulder, they awaited not just response, but validation. The moment felt both exhilarating and perilous, twisting like a tightrope walk above unknown chasms. But as they crossed into the spotlight, determined to own their story, another unsettling thought hovered at the edges of Matthew's mind. What if their vision didn't just gain critical approval or applause, but unravel everything they thought they understood about themselves? As the lights dimmed and the murmurs of the crowd faded into silence, Matthew felt a jolt of electricity in the air that pulsed through him. He struggled to keep his focus, reminding himself of Sarah's earlier words. Authentic expression was the key. Yet his legs felt leaden, rooted in place by his internal conflict.
Stepping into the spotlight, he couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety that wrung his gut. Every critic present became an embodiment of his fears, his voice quavering, his vision vulnerable. As they began their presentation, Sarah launched into their concept with the confidence of an artist who had long wielded an assertive brush. Matthew admired her composure, trying to tether his clouds of doubt as he contributed, but a tremor in his voice betrayed him as he outlined his thematic additions. When it was Matthew's turn to speak, he could feel eyes scanning him, searching for flaws. "Our work explores emotional resonance," he began, his heart hammering in rhythm with the staccato of his words. He struggled to maintain eye contact with the audience, moving through the narrative of their mixed media. Each word spilled out clumsily, like paint thrown at a canvas without care. But somewhere in the back of his mind flickered a determination sharper than his insecurities. As
they progressed, Matthew watched Sarah's expressions, her fervor contagious yet intimidating. The crowd warmed to them, nods and murmurs of appreciation melded with gasps of intrigue. Matthew started leaning into the adrenaline, recognizing the growing energy surrounding his voice. He inserted anecdotes from their creative process, painting vivid images of late-night brainstorms and unexpected breakthroughs. Each story added texture to their concept, pulling the audience deeper into their journey. But a sharp intestinal twist reminded him of the critics, ready to dissect his every word. He fought against the urge to retract, to hide behind theoretical jargon that would shield him from unwelcomed judgment. Instead, a quiet rebellion stirred within him. This was his work, too. He took a deep breath, running his fingers over their project displayed prominently behind them. "Art is personal," he asserted, leaning into the raw core of their message. "These pieces don't just live in the world of aesthetics. They tell stories, our stories, the struggles, the fears, and most importantly, the triumphs of collaboration." In this pivotal moment, his articulation transformed from a hesitant whisper to a resonant declaration, an admission of vulnerability that connected with the crowd. Louder applause followed, each clap igniting a spark of pride within him. He felt Sarah's gaze anchored beside him, their energies tethered through the intensity of the experience. It was a strange warmth, a fusion of validation and clarity that merged their artistic voices. As they transitioned toward the end of their presentation, an unexpected aspect of the exhibition drew nearer: the Q&A segment. Questions poured down like rain, but what landed most heavily was the moment one critic, a figure known for his cutting insights, directed a piercing question toward Matthew. "While you clearly have the emotional component, how do you ensure that your narrative doesn't overwhelm the intention behind your designs?" Matthew's mind raced. This was a crossroads. He could retreat to the safety of theoretical jargon or embrace the chance to defend the heart of their work. He drew in strength from Sarah's unwavering presence beside him. Navigating through his thoughts, confronting the critic, he replied, "The intention is intricately woven within the emotions. They coalesce to spark just as much curiosity as they do personal connection. This is what allows us to bridge art with viewer interpretation." He found his rhythm, his confidence unfolded like a blossom under the sun. The crowd seemed to share the moment with him, mirroring his emotional resolve and appreciation for this adventure of self-expression. As they concluded, a wave of applause crashed over Matthew, lifting him momentarily above the churn of his worries. But beneath the surface, a revelation rattled within him. Perhaps validation was not merely about critical approval, but the confidence to embrace his voice and perspective openly. Standing there, he could sense a shift deep inside, a pivotal moment unfolding with every heartbeat. While the exhibition neared its conclusion and the euphoria began to settle, an unsettling thought intruded on his clarity. What would happen after this moment? Would he return to the shadows of self-doubt, or was he ready to fully realize who he could become? Walking off the stage, the thunderous applause still ringing in his ears, Matthew experienced an unfamiliar amalgamation of relief and exhilaration. As he exited to the side, Sarah grinned at him, her eyes dancing with pride. "You were amazing out there. I really felt that connection you forged with the audience." Her words wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. But as the euphoric haze started to fade, doubt crept its way back into his mind. He knew this high wouldn't last. In truth, he had flirted with fear, but not vanquished it. He faced the reality of the days ahead, the pressure to maintain this newfound confidence looming like a dense fog. "Thanks, Sarah," he replied, managing a smile while his thoughts swirled with uncertainty. Would his performance matter in the grand scheme of things, or would it simply blend into the background of 1,000 other presentations? Determination to harness the moment washed over him, tempered by the nagging fear of falling back into anonymity. In the days following the exhibition, Matthew dedicated himself to introspection. He began journaling every evening, synthesizing his thoughts on their presentation and the critics' feedback. The pages quickly filled with reflections that unveiled aspects of his identity he hadn't fully acknowledged before. Many entries revolved around his struggle with self-doubt and the weight of expectation. Others celebrated the exhilarating connections he saw in art. Yet it wasn't until he attended a small gallery opening featuring local artists that a striking realization crystallized for him. As he wandered the space filled with vibrant canvases, he overheard conversations buzzing around him. Critics dissected work, but what captured Matthew's attention was the vulnerability of the artists, many of whom stood nervously by their pieces. They shared intimate stories behind their creations, unapologetically exposing not just their art, but themselves. Matthew couldn't shake the conviction that this was the essence missing in his own career. While navigating the art world, he had valued technical skill, concept, and process, but had he truly embraced the raw authenticity behind personal stories? He felt a surge of inspiration mingled with apprehension at the thought of shedding his polished surface to reveal deeper truths, a daunting and thrilling venture. That night, fueled by the vulnerability he witnessed, Matthew decided to experiment. Rather than isolating his art from his emotional state, he would merge them into one coherent expression. Using his journal as a canvas, he sketched raw plans for a new project, one that would dive into personal narratives and embrace imperfection. "What if I could explore the intersectionality of emotions through various mediums?" he scribbled, his adrenaline flowing. "What if others could see themselves reflected in that struggle?" The next morning, despite the familiar pull of self-doubt, he promised himself that this feeling of resolve would take precedence over anxiety. It felt like stepping on to the precipice of transformation. Idea sprouted into a plan, evolving beyond mere sketches into a full-blown concept that included multimedia installations paired with live narrative performances. From voiceovers to visual storytelling, he envisioned art that was not just to be viewed, but to be felt, experienced. On a seemingly ordinary afternoon, while drafting notes for the structure, Matthew received an unexpected text from Sarah. "Can we meet? I have something important to discuss." Curiosity bubbled inside him. What could be so significant? As he pondered whether this was an opportunity to share his evolving vision, the weight of anticipation mixed with trepidation coiled in his stomach. As Sarah revealed her news over coffee, a broader horizon began to unfold, a potential collaboration that could challenge them both. Would this opportunity align with the direction their distinct voices now aimed toward? The moment of truth was loomed closer than he anticipated. With excitement sparking the air around them, Matthew realized that embracing this path was perhaps only the beginning of an even greater journey, one that would challenge every layer he had built around himself. What if this was a chance to confront the self he'd previously eluded? However, as her words painted a vivid picture of what lay ahead, a question hovered ominously in his mind.
Was he truly prepared for the risk this endeavor posed to expose his authenticity? Matthew stared at the swirling pattern of the coffee in front of him, the latte art slowly fading as he wrestled with the prospect Sarah had just laid out. A potential collaboration, blending their visions into one cohesive project. It sounded exhilarating, yet the weight of vulnerability thundered in his mind like an ominous drumbeat. "Matthew, are you okay?" Sarah's voice pierced through his reverie. He forced a smile, shaking off the shadows of doubt lingering around him. "Yeah, just thinking. This is exciting." He paused, assessing the glimmer of enthusiasm in Sarah's eyes. "But also terrifying." "Exactly," she said, her voice a playful octave higher. "It's supposed to be terrifying. That's when real growth happens." Her words rippled through him, contradicting the doubts that gnawed at his self-worth. Could he truly excavate the depths of his own experiences for art? The idea lingered on the edge of his thoughts. The creeping fear that he'd expose his vulnerabilities to the world was both daunting and exhilarating. "The thing is," Sarah continued, leaning in closer, her demeanor shifting to serious, "we can't hold back. This project revolves around authenticity, right? If we want it to resonate, we have to be real with ourselves and the audience." His heart raced at her insistence. What if his real self wasn't enough to engage others? What if their collaboration stumbled at the first step? With a deep breath, he wrestled with the conflicting narratives playing out in his mind, yearning to share the insights he had recently discovered. "I've been thinking a lot about how this needs to be different. It can't just be pretty art. It has to mean something about our struggles, our raw truths." The words spilled out, fueled by the electric atmosphere Sarah's passion ignited in him. "That's exactly what I was hoping for." Sarah's eyes brightened. "We should lay down our limits. Let's mark the lines we've been afraid to cross." "You mean like delving into personal experiences?" he asked, gauging her comfort level. "Absolutely. We might even incorporate our own stories. What struggles shaped us? What failures made us who we are?" She was fervent, but Matthew felt a flash of resistance rise within him. Hadn't he spent years erecting walls around his vulnerabilities? He could feel each brick quake under the pressure of her challenge. "What if I don't have anything compelling to share? What if I just look foolish?" The fear unfurled, a chilling whisper deep inside him. "Then let's embrace the foolishness," Sarah said with a laugh, her infectious spirit cutting through the fog of uncertainty. "We'll own the mess. People appreciate truth, even if it's hard to spit out." Matthew watched as her enthusiasm spread, igniting an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. Perhaps he had been walling himself in for too long. But what mess could he possibly reveal without feeling exposed? The conversation moved on, yet deep within him a flicker ignited, a determination to peel back layers he had carefully polished over time. Over the next few days, the challenge of collaborating with Sarah meant a newfound reckoning with his past. Each evening, he immersed himself in writing, reflecting not just on moments of triumph, but also on insecurities, fears, and failures he had long buried. His journal became a sanctuary for honesty, a scroll of raw revelations instead of just polished reflections. But as he wrote, the shadows of doubt still crept in, taunting him with the thought, how much of this would be enough? Would anyone resonate with his struggles, or had he forgotten the language of vulnerability? As he slowly outlined the potential pieces for their project, installations incorporating mixed media and narrative elements, Matthew felt a shift within. With each stroke of his pen, he uncovered layers of sentiment that had long hidden beneath the surface. Yet, just as the spark of inspiration took hold, a realization hit him harder than anyone else's gaze. Sharing his vulnerabilities meant risking exposure beyond the art. It meant opening himself up to potential critiques and judgments from an audience he had only just begun to engage with. The time had come to face not only the audience, but himself. Could he truly stand in front of others, bearing his soul through both visual and spoken mediums, without crumbling beneath the weight of expectation? As he mulled this thought, the phone buzzed, breaking him from his reverie. It was a message from Sarah. Want to meet to brainstorm more ideas? We can't put this off. Let's make the art happen. Smiley face. His heart raced as he contemplated her words. Both fear and excitement twisted in his gut. Was he ready to embrace the
risk for the sake of honesty in their work? Could he transform the fear of judgment into a stepping stone toward authenticity? In that moment, clarity settled. Embracing vulnerability was not just a step toward artistic growth, it was his invitation to redefine himself, both in art and in life. The possibility hung heavy in the air, charged with anticipation. Matthew smiled at his phone, feeling something shift within him, an adrenaline-infused rush of determination coursing through his veins. The time had indeed come to dive deeper. But what awaited him on the other side of this bold endeavor remained clouded in mystery. Matthew stood before the vast canvas in his studio, a palette of colors spread out like the vibrant experiences he had begun to embrace. His heart raced as he prepared for the opening of their joint exhibition, a culmination of months spent confronting his insecurities and peeling back layers of himself he had kept hidden for far too long. The pieces around him were not mere artworks. They were whispers of his journey, imprints of both struggle and strength woven together through collaboration with Sarah. Days leading up to the exhibition had instilled a fresh confidence in him. Sarah's infectious enthusiasm and unwavering support slowly chipped away at the walls he had so meticulously constructed. They had worked tirelessly, integrating their narratives into the pieces that dared to breach the boundaries of conventional art. Each piece resonated with raw emotion, inviting viewers to navigate the labyrinth of their thoughts and feelings. There were no masks. It was an honest reflection of their growth. As he adjusted the final strokes on his latest piece, he marveled at how far he had come. No longer was he the hesitant artist cowering under the weight of external expectations. Matthew felt a profound shift within, a solid confidence that radiated in every corner of his being. He stood here not just as an architect of art, but as a person engaged in meaningful dialogue with his fears, finally grasping the concept of vulnerability as a potent tool for connection. Opening night arrived, infused with excitement and a hint of anxiety. The gallery buzzed with life, teeming with art lovers and critics alike. As attendees began to arrive, Matthew felt the gnawing tension of anticipation, but it was complemented by a sense of accomplishment that fluttered in his chest. Each shared story greeted him as a reminder of the humanity that unites us all. The crowd moved through the exhibition, pausing to engage with the pieces that spoke volumes about personal narratives and shared vulnerabilities. As people approached him, complimenting the work and offering insights, Matthew realized that he had truly come into his own. Direct conversations about emotions, culture, and identity flowed effortlessly, and for the first time, he understood that his voice was not only valuable but necessary. "Your project makes you feel alive," a visitor expressed, eyes bright with understanding. The words ignited a warmth inside him. "It really encourages us to dig deeper into our own experiences." Matthew smiled, a deep sense of pride swelling as he responded. The affirmation he had long sought from others was unfolding before him, not the approval of critics, but real connections magnifying the very essence of what art is meant to be. In a moment of serendipity, Sarah found him amid the crowd, her beaming smile illuminating his heart. "You know," she began, her voice edged with exhilaration, "tonight is just the beginning. We've started something powerful that transcends walls and binds us in shared experiences." He nodded, his agreement mirrored in the sparkle of their eyes. They had conquered the challenge of fragility together and now stood firmly on the ground they had crafted. As the night went on, a familiar critic approached, his presence commanding. Matthew felt a pang of trepidation, but this time he was ready. The critic examined the pieces, a discerning look scrutinizing every facet of their creations before turning his gaze back to Matthew. "What you've done here is refreshing. You've managed to transcend mere artistry. It embodies a spirit that invites conversation and introspection. I commend the courage necessary to share your vulnerability." Matthew inhaled deeply, feeling the reassuring wave of validation wash over him. The critic's acknowledgement served as a striking confirmation of the transformative path he had embarked on. This was the culmination of hard-won battles against his internal struggles, transforming into authentic expression recognized by those whose opinions once intimidated him. It solidified his place in this space of creativity. As the night closed, Matthew lingered at the gallery entrance, watching patrons leaving with smiles and thoughtful expressions. He turned to find Sarah beside him, her eyes shimmering with victory, reminiscent of the journey they had taken together. "I won't say I never doubted us," he began, with a hint of playfulness. "But here we are, something real, something impactful." "And so much more is to come," she replied, optimism lighting up her features. "This is a defining moment for both of us." In that moment, Matthew understood that he had not only accomplished a professional milestone, but had undergone a profound personal transformation. He had confronted his past, embraced vulnerability, and emerged with a solid confidence and recognized competence within his chosen field. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment that transcended mere accolades. He had carved his path towards authentic self-expression. Stepping into the future illuminated by newfound clarity, Matthew realized that he was not merely an architect of structures, but also of stories that lent voices to the unspoken. His journey was far from over. This was just the first of many threshold moments. He turned to Sarah, a smile forming as he contemplated the next chapter of their creative endeavors together. A shared adventure awaited them, one that would continue to challenge, evolve, and inspire the world around them. Now, as the final visitors drifted into the night, he understood the profound pull of authenticity would guide their futures. Matthew was ready. No more trepidation, no more looking back. He had stepped into his light. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the word. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.